A quiet morning in Los Angeles. David Lynch sits before his familiar cup of coffee, his silver hair rising like an unchanging icon. He reads the weather report in his gentle voice, and in that moment, you can't help but wonder, how can someone so calm be the father of some of the darkest films in America? That is the greatest paradox of Lynch. A gentle soul who sees the shadows others never notice. Why does the peaceful suburb, through his eyes, become a place hiding sinister secrets? Why do dreams, the sound of wind, the smallest passing moments, transform into the surreal worlds of Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks? What lies behind that polite exterior? His childhood? A family constantly on the move? Or 4 turbulent marriages? Lynch once said, "I don't try to understand things, I feel them." And to understand this man, we must begin where his emotions were born. A childhood that seemed quiet, yet carried subtle cracks that would later shape the Lynchian universe. David Lynch was born into a classic American middle-class family. A father who worked for the Department of Agriculture, and a mother who taught English. A kind, disciplined household with no major tragedies. But what shaped Lynch came from a small yet crucial detail. His family had to move constantly across the United States. For a sensitive child, the act of settling into a place only to leave it again created a long, lingering sense of unfamiliarity. Lynch grew up in quiet suburban towns filled with empty spaces, streets that were too clean, houses that were too silent, polite smiles that felt unreal. He realized early on that beneath America's beautiful surface, something was off. That constant feeling of not belonging anywhere turned Lynch into a silent observer. He didn't speak much, but he saw things deeply. His childhood planted 3 seeds within him: a sense of isolation, a powerful imagination, and a fascination with the invisible mysteries hidden in everyday life. And from that seemingly calm foundation, a surreal world began to form, where suburbia became a doorway into dark, dream-like landscapes. Those fragments of childhood memories would follow Lynch for the rest of his life, becoming the very DNA of the cinematic style the world would one day call Lynchian. David Lynch did not begin as a filmmaker. In fact, he only wanted to become a painter. During his teenage years, Lynch spent hours in the garage painting, mixing colors, and finding peace in every stroke of the brush. Cinema was still a distant world, until one fateful moment. One day, while standing in front of a painting, Lynch felt as if it was moving. The sensation was so strange, he could never forget it. And from that moment on, a question haunted him. If a painting can come alive, can I create images that breathe? That question pulled Lynch toward his first short films. Small, rough, dark, and incomprehensible, yet already charged with the unmistakable Lynch energy. The early years were far from easy. He was broke, stuck between art school and the realities of life. Many people didn't understand what he was trying to do, but Lynch refused to give up, because somehow he knew he had found what he wanted to pursue for the rest of his life. A form of art that lived somewhere between painting and dreaming. And then, destiny opened its true door. Eraserhead. A film so bizarre no one believed it could ever be completed. Except Lynch. From that moment, the spark was lit. And Lynch never looked back. After years of persistence with Eraserhead, 1977, a film so haunting and eccentric it felt almost impossible, David Lynch suddenly caught Hollywood's attention. No one believed that a black-and-white, surreal, painfully low-budget project made over many years could open the path that would lead him straight into the ranks of America's great auteurs. But it did, and everything began to change from that moment. In 1980, Lynch created The Elephant Man, a film strangely gentle and deeply humane for someone who had made Eraserhead. Its black and white imagery, its soft narrative voice, and its profound empathy for a man misunderstood by the world left audiences stunned. The film earned 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Director, an unmistakable sign that Hollywood didn't just see Lynch, it genuinely respected him. It was the moment he stepped out from the shadow of an underground artist and into the orbit of the greats. But in 1986, Lynch did something completely counterintuitive. He brought audiences back to American suburbia, only not the suburbia of postcards. Blue Velvet opened with a perfect green lawn, then tilted downward beneath the grass to reveal a world of darkness, desire, guilt, and spiritual decay woven together. The severed ear lying in the grass wasn't just a shocking image. It was Lynch's artistic manifesto. Don't trust what you see. The film was fiercely criticized and passionately praised, and it brought Lynch his second Oscar nomination. This was the moment when the word Lynchian truly became a cultural definition. Then came 1990, bringing a turning point. Wild at Heart won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. On the most prestigious stage in world cinema, Lynch stood in the applause of people who once couldn't understand him. That award didn't just honor a film, it honored a vision. From this moment on, Lynch was no longer the weird director. He was an artist with a style no one could imitate. Also in 1990, Lynch sent the entire United States into a frenzy when Twin Peaks was born. A television series unlike anything the world had ever seen. A familiar small town overflowing with secrets. A murder mystery that pulled viewers into a long, hypnotic dream. People gathered in diners to discuss Laura Palmer. Late-night talk shows dedicated whole segments to Twin Peaks. Between 1990 and 1991, America lived inside an atmosphere of strangeness only Lynch could create. And Hollywood realized something important. Lynch did not bend to the market. The market bent itself to follow him. Then, in 2001, Mulholland Drive exploded like a dream with no exit. This wasn't just a film. It was a sensation. A labyrinth of desire, illusion, loneliness, and fractured identity. American film magazines called it a masterpiece of the 21st century, placing it among the best films of the decade. Lynch didn't follow storytelling rules. He broke them, then used the fragments to build a dream so beautiful it hurt. But behind all that glory came pressure. The media asked him, "What does the film mean?" Lynch only smiled. No explanations, no defenses. Because to him, art isn't meant to be decoded. It's meant to be felt. And that was when Lynch's halo reached its purest form. No noise, no arguments, only one undeniable truth. David Lynch is the only person in Hollywood who created an entire world of his own. A world where everything looks ordinary, until you look deep enough to see the strangeness hiding beneath the perfect surface. While the world praised David Lynch as a genius, few knew that inside him there always existed a quiet storm, one that had followed him from childhood all the way through the brightest years of his career. Even though he grew up in a stable family, Lynch never truly felt at home anywhere. Moving constantly from state to state planted in him a hard-to-name sense of isolation, a gentle yet deep kind of displacement, as if he were always watching the world from behind a thin sheet of glass. As he grew older, that feeling didn't disappear. It grew alongside his fame. And then Hollywood arrived. Endless interviews, pressure to explain films he himself did not want to explain. The expectations of an entire industry wanting him to maintain the strangeness they worshipped. All of it created an invisible pressure, like a ringing sound inside a sealed room that no one else could hear except Lynch. His personal life was no calmer. During those years, Lynch was so consumed by creation that he often forgot the real world existed at all. That strained his relationships. One marriage fell apart, then another. People imagine geniuses living in dazzling light, but Lynch lived between two worlds, one made of the dreams he created and one made of reality, a place he always felt distant from, and neither world fully belonged to him. It was at the height of his career that Lynch began experiencing periods of psychological tension, anxiety, emotional instability, moments he couldn't control. He said he heard noise in his head, repeating images and feelings he couldn't name. During these years, the darkness in his films didn't come from imagination. It came from deep within his own soul. Behind Hollywood's bright lights, Lynch wasn't a distant genius. He was just a man trying to confront his complicated inner world. And the greatest paradox was this: the more famous he became, the lonelier he felt. The more praise he received, the more detached he became from real life. Yet those very cracks fed the entirety of Lynch's artistic power. He did not hide the darkness inside himself. He turned it into images, sounds, dreams, the things audiences would later call Lynchian. That hidden storm did not destroy Lynch. It shaped him. And it would lead him into another phase of his life. Years of collapse, disappearance, and the decision to step away from the spotlight to protect himself. When someone like David Lynch reaches the peak of his career, people expect him to continue exploding with creativity. But few knew that after those resounding successes, Lynch entered a terrifying emptiness, a kind of collapse that made no noise, yet stretched long and deep like the darkness in his own films. Hollywood now wanted Lynch to be easier to understand. They wanted him to make films driven by market taste, by box office numbers, by formulas everyone knew. But Lynch could not create without freedom. He once said, "If there is no freedom, there is no film." And Hollywood was slowly suffocating that very freedom. Projects were forced to change scripts. Creative ideas were constrained. Investors wanted him to walk straight, while Lynch was born to walk in circles. This conflict made him withdraw further and further, losing interest even in cinema, the thing he once considered his breath. Meanwhile, his personal life was also entering a difficult chapter. Broken marriages left him with emotional voids. He grew tired, drained, disappointed in himself. Fame, the thing so many dream of, made him feel detached from the real world, trapped inside a box others had defined for him. There were years when Lynch almost vanished. No films, no announcements, no explanations, just Lynch quietly stepping out of the spotlight, gently but decisively. The media called it a crisis. Fans called it a strange silence. But the truth was simpler. Lynch needed to breathe. He needed distance from Hollywood's machinery to protect the purest part of himself, the raw creative energy that had birthed Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive. This withdrawal was not a failure. It was an instinctive decision to save himself. And from that silent darkness, a new David Lynch began to form, calmer, deeper, ready to step into a journey of healing. A journey that would lead him to meditation, to years of free creativity, and ultimately, to a remarkable rebirth. When the Hollywood lights went out, what remained wasn't the greatness of the masterpieces. but a silence so long it became haunting. And it was in that silence that David Lynch had to face himself. Not the Lynch of the media, not the Lynch of Cannes, but the Lynch of sleepless nights, fractured relationships, and questions he had never wanted to answer. The consequences of his disappearance didn't arrive with a loud crash. They arrived as a slow, persistent exhaustion, a sense that everything was moving on, while he stood still. Lynch once said that during those years he felt like a broadcast signal full of static, a kind of mental chaos he couldn't put into words. The creativity was still there, but it was tangled, distorted, no longer flowing like before. Broken marriages carved deep hollows inside him, pushing him further into his private world. Those close to him said Lynch lived as if between two layers of reality. One was the real world, and the other was the strange images constantly swirling in his mind. And when the real world became too chaotic, he retreated into the inner one, the world where he felt safer. It was during this time that Lynch discovered transcendental meditation, TM. At first, it was merely an experiment to soothe his restlessness, but gradually, meditation became his lifeline. Twice a day, consistently, quietly, and slowly. Like the surface of a lake settling after a gust of wind, Lynch began to feel again the peace he had long lost. Meditation didn't erase the scars, but it helped him look at them without fear. It helped him breathe again. It helped him remember why he created in the first place. These years also saw Lynch return to the most fundamental parts of himself: painting, sculpting, making music, recording his dreams like scattered fragments. No pressure, no box office demands, no expectations except his own. We often only see geniuses on the stage. But here, Lynch wasn't a genius. He was a man learning to mend himself after too many layers of expectation had worn down his soul. These wandering years were quiet, but not meaningless. Because in the darkness of this period, the seed of a great rebirth was quietly taking root. A resurgence no one, not even Lynch, could have predicted. When someone who once stood at the summit, like David Lynch, falls into silence, the world assumes he is gone for good. But silence, for Lynch, has never been an ending. It is simply the warm-up phase of a new creative cycle, slower, deeper, and freer. And then, from that very stillness, an unexpected rebirth began. In 2017, Lynch returned with Twin Peaks: The Return. Not a predictable sequel, not a nostalgic gift to please the audience, but an 18-hour artistic manifesto. A work that was part television, part cinema, part dream, part nightmare. Audiences were bewildered. Critics were stunned. Many magazines called it a masterpiece of the new era, one of the boldest comebacks any director had ever made. The strange thing is, Lynch did not return to reclaim his position. He returned for freedom. No chains, no pressure, no attempts to explain anything. And perhaps that is exactly why Twin Peaks: The Return became the most glorious milestone of his later career. But after that explosion, Lynch again slipped quietly into the background. No Hollywood ambitions, no chase for fame, no running after the machinery of the industry. Instead, he devoted himself to small but genuine things: meditation, painting, music, his charming weather report videos, and especially caring for his youngest daughter, Lula. In his twilight years, he was no longer the director commanding a film set. He was a calm father, a free artist in his small Los Angeles studio, a place where he found the simplest, truest version of himself. The most beautiful part of this rebirth is that it wasn't loud. It wasn't a return to prove something. It was the return of a man who had crossed through darkness, understood himself, and chosen to live in a way untouched by anyone's expectations. Some directors returned to continue. David Lynch returned to be himself. And afterward, he chose to step back, to choose peace, but not to disappear. He simply stood at the edge of Hollywood, observing it the same way he once observed American suburbia as a child, peaceful on the surface, strange in its deeper layers. Lynch's rebirth wasn't a single explosive moment. It was a state, a quiet peace he spent many years searching for and finally found. David Lynch's legacy does not lie in the shiny trophies inside a glass cabinet. It lies in those strangely intimate moments when a viewer suddenly freezes, looks at the screen, and asks, "What did I just feel?" Lynch did not build a monument out of awards, although he had plenty, from Cannes to multiple Oscar nominations. He built his legacy from something far harder to measure: a feeling. Throughout his career, Lynch never tried to explain the world. He simply cracked a door open and let the audience step into layers of consciousness they never knew they had. That is why his influence doesn't spread loudly. It seeps in, quietly, like water sinking through soil. You don't notice it at first, but one day, as you look at a peaceful suburban street in the afternoon, you think of Lynch. When the wind blows through your window at midnight, you think of Lynch. When a strange dream leaves you unsettled the entire day, you think of Lynch. That is a kind of legacy very few directors in history can create. A subtle tint on how an entire generation perceives the world. Young filmmakers who grew up with Lynch's work never tried to copy him, because no one can replicate something so elusive, but they learned something far more important: courage. The courage to tell a story without making everything clear. The courage to trust their instincts over market formulas. The courage to make a film that people feel before they understand. The term Lynchian exists not because his films are hard to understand, but because they evoke a feeling no one else can replicate. A feeling that is familiar yet unsettling, beautiful yet frightening. Like standing in a dark room with a faintly flickering bulb overhead. Anyone who has watched Lynch carries that feeling with them, like a small imprint in the mind. But there is another part of Lynch's legacy, gentler, quieter, yet profoundly real: his kindness. Despite creating films drenched in darkness, Lynch chose to live his life in light. He spent decades working with transcendental meditation, even founding a charitable foundation to bring meditation to underprivileged students, veterans with PTSD, victims of violence, and the homeless. A man who made films about fear, but devoted his real life to soothing the fears of others. That paradox only deepens the meaning of his legacy. David Lynch never tried to leave anything behind, but simply by living and creating in his own way, he left behind something greater than fame: a world. A world where darkness and light do not oppose each other, but merge. Where beauty isn't perfect, but jagged, ambiguous, and strangely honest. Where dreams aren't meant to be explained, but felt. And perhaps that is his most enduring legacy. Lynch didn't just change cinema. He changed the way people look at the small, mysterious corners of their own lives. When we look back on the life of David Lynch, we realize he never lived like a cinematic legend. He lived like a man trying to understand the world in his own way, slowly, quietly, with deep observation. He walked through 4 marriages, long stretches of silence, years of self-doubt, and moments of suffocating loneliness. But not once did Lynch turn his back on creation. Not once did he let fear speak for him. Lynch never tried to become a great artist. He simply tried to become a whole human being, and it is precisely that simple truth that made him great. From the dull suburbia of his childhood, from endless relocations, from the cracks within his own soul, he found an entire universe to tell his stories. Everything beautiful and strange in Lynch's films is a reflection of the things he felt in real life. Unease, gentleness, human fragility, and the faint light hidden behind the darkness. In his later years, Lynch no longer stands in the center of Hollywood. He sits in his small studio, painting, meditating, drinking coffee, making his morning weather videos, a peaceful rhythm so gentle it's hard to believe that this man once created dreams that shook the world. But perhaps this is the final message Lynch leaves behind. Peace is not the absence of darkness. Peace is having the courage to face it. And when we look back at his long journey, from a poor art student to a Palme d'Or winner to disappearance, and then a triumphant return, we see that darkness never consumed him. It only helped him understand himself more deeply and understand the complex beauty of being human. Now the story reaches you. What moves you most about David Lynch? His eccentricity, his gentleness, or his ability to see the unusual within the utterly ordinary? Share your thoughts below. And if you want to continue exploring other mysterious lives with me, don't forget to follow so you won't miss any of the deep journeys ahead. This story closes here, but the Lynchian universe is still waiting for you to step inside.